when you look at personal injury marketing, you go, okay, with marketing, you always reverse engineer. You go, well, what's working best, what's working least, all that stuff. Everything about marketing is reverse engineering. There's no guessing. So where do patients go first? So we're going to follow the flow chart. And based on the flow chart of where they go, that's where you want to do your marketing. And based on what they want to hear is what you say. That's what good marketing is. It's all about reverse engineering. So having said that, let's take a typical, let's do a flow chart of a typical personal injury patient, car accident injury patient. So they get involved in an accident. So what happens? Only 15% of them go to the emergency room. 85% do not. Remember, 80% of the accidents are low impact soft tissue spinal injuries under 20 miles an hour. 80% are under 20 miles an hour. So the vast majority of accidents are not, fractures, compound fractures, dislocations. That's not the majority of accidents. So the majority of them are under 20 miles an hour. So you go, they're in an accident. So let's follow the person who doesn't go to the emergency room. What do they typically do? Well, they'll typically wait a little while. Some of them will go right to their medical doctor. And if they don't go to their medical doctor, they'll go to like a local immediate care center. That's kind of what they'll do. If they have their own doctor, they'll go to their GP. If they don't, they typically go to like an immediate care type center for pain, things like that. So that's where most of the business is. And actually, if you really wanted to follow the true flow chart of where the business is, who gets the first call? The first call is the insurance company saying that there's a claim, there's an accident. So there's actually a marketing system in place that I have to market to the insurance adjusters. I actually have that. And I talk about that separately. In other words, we give the insurance adjuster what they want. Well, we already know what the insurance adjusters are used to. Big fat bills, never-ending bills. So if you can, and I go into this separately. So if you wanted to market to the insurance adjuster, because that's where all of them start. That's where most of the personal injury cases are. That's where all of them are if there's a claim. So it's to get in with the insurance company and basically educate them on how you can help inhibit costs. Okay, that's a whole nother story. Let's leave that alone and keep following the flow chart. So the next is the local GP, the local immediate care center. Well, there's marketing that we have to do for that. Matter of fact, there's more auto injury patients that go to the local GP center or their local GPs or to a local immediate care center than go to an attorney. Only about a third of the cases go to attorneys. 2/3 of them don't. So the vast majority of people don't go to an attorney. So having said that, so that's a next place to market, the immediate care centers. Now, the good and bad news about that is they don't treat neuromusculoskeletal. They treat infections and things like that. They don't treat neuromusculoskeletal. There's a lot of potential business there. That's good. The bad news, it's not a forced market. Like with attorneys, it's a forced market. Well, a medical doctor doesn't have to refer to a chiropractor at all. So to get that kind of business, what do you have to do? Well, remember, there's 3 types of business. There's publicity, there's advertising, and there's educational sales, and each one of them works differently. So publicity works to increase awareness, interest, desire, and create some credibility. That's what publicity does. And then advertising is actually used to try to get business, but they don't have a need to send to a chiropractor. Matter of fact, most medical providers are confused what chiropractors do, just like the masses are. That's why 92% of the public at large does not go to chiropractors. They're confused with all the mixed messaging from treating cancer to flus to the immune system, just total loss of credibility. And there's no ownership in any one particular slice of the market. So what do you need to do to get referrals from immediate care centers? Well, you have to use educational sales. So we cover that. We go into the marketing of how to market to them, all that stuff. But what has to happen is they've got to have a shift in consciousness. They have no intention and no reasons why they should be sending them to a chiropractor at all. So that whole consciousness needs to change. And when I cover that marketing strategy, I go into how to do it. But the bad news, like I said, it's not a forced market. The good news is, if you do develop those relationships to where you get them to see the value, and by the way, they're totally based on science. When you go to the medical profession, nothing is about chiropractic. You never say anything about subluxations, nothing. It's all about the science of the 3 phases of healing. The medical profession is all about the science. And so the whole messaging is based on the science of the 3 phases of healing. And I'll be covering that separately, how that works. And it works really well when you do educate the medical doctor, because they really appreciate it. You can have a lot of good success, especially with neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons, pain management doctors, when you can really explain to them the science of the 3 phases of healing and your role, chiropractic's role within those categories. It does create a lot of business, but you do have to know how to do that. You got to know what to say. That's called educational sales. So that's another big opportunity, is the immediate care centers. But again, you got to know what to say. Okay, just dropping off donuts and cookies not going to do it. All right. So that's the first play. So the first call goes to the insurance adjuster. The second basically call, after they call their spouse, is their general practitioner or the immediate care center. So those are two big potential referral cases, but it does take us a very specific messaging, and I cover that separately. And I totally recommend it, by the way. And one of the reasons I recommend it is, if you're not aware of this, when you look at the 3 phases of healing, and the therapeutic goal of the repair phase of healing is to restore all ranges of motion, active, passive, and joint motion. Well, there's no other profession that actually does that. Even a physical therapist will typically stay in active range of motion. I remember when I went to physical therapist, I had to teach him to take my joint into overpressure range of motion. He didn't know how to do it. And they sure don't know physiological joint manipulation. So they're really good at active range of motion. They're terrible at overpressure and joint motion. Well, that's where all the injuries are. When you have these injuries, they're in the overpressure joint motion category. So that's why I say chiropractic is the only profession that treats the repair phase of healing in overpressure and joint motion. That's it. There is no other profession. And we already know the negative effects when that doesn't happen to the neurology. We already know that how it affects when there's an increased number of nerves, when the nerves are more sensitive, if the nerves are trapped. We already know how it affects all that. Okay. All right. So that's the messaging that they like. And the second part of that message is if they don't receive it, they'll end up with a permanent problem to some degree. So anyway, we get into the motivation of the immediate care center people separately when I cover that marketing. Okay, so that's next to you. So you're looking at the emergency room. That's a small percent. The majority of them won't go there, but that's definitely a marketplace. The emergency room. I remember I went to the local emergency room to explain to the emergency room doctors just lordosis, something simple as, seeing lordosis, hypolordosis, and flexion extension x-rays. I mean, just real simple stuff if you're a chiropractor. Well, they don't look for that at all. When they look for an x-ray, they're looking for dislocations and fractures. They're not looking for spinal biomechanics. So they thought it was real interesting. They're like, wow, we didn't know that. So it's not necessarily what they do, but again, I was just educating them to help create referrals. Okay, so and we cover how to do that, all the talking points, what to do, that's all separately. So you're at the emergency room, you're at the local GP, and you're at the immediate care center. That's educational sales with the 3 phases of healing. That's what that is. All right, so let's pass that. And you go, okay, what's the next thing? Well, that's when they will ask that's when they'll ask their circle of influence. Do you know of a doctor? Do you know of a chiropractor? Do you know of an attorney? Remember, every time we buy a product or service, there's 5 reasons that we'll go through in our head on why we will do that. Number 1 is always trust in every industry. The next 4 are different per industry. But in the chiropractic industry, it's proximity, especially if it's a brick and mortar business. After trust, 75% of the reason somebody's going to pick you is because of proximity. Number 4 is service factors. And the last one is quality. Quality is the last, it's not the first. And it's only 3% why somebody will pick you. So having said that, they went to the doctor. So they called the insurance adjuster. So that's one potential marketing source. They went to the emergency room, a small percent did. So that's another potential source. They went to the GP, the local GP. That's another. And what's great about GPs, they don't like personal injury at all. They don't like testifying. It's kind of like a fish out of water. They're not good with neuromusculoskeletal. They're pretty good with infections and flu and pneumonia and stuff like that. They're terrible with neuromusculoskeletal and just totally forget about spinal biomechanics. But they don't like treating personal injury. So that's actually an advantage that you have with your local GP to go over there and try to create referrals from your local GP. They don't like it because they don't want to deal with LOPs. They don't want their money held up. And they darn well don't want to testify in court. That scares a lot of people. A lot of medical doctors, GPs especially, do not want to do anything with testifying in court because they're bad at it. They're also bad at it. So there's a natural market there with a GP. There's some of these natural markets. Some of them are stronger than others. But when we actually go to the individual marketing, we exploit that. We go, okay, well, where's the natural market for this particular contact? The message that I'll use for an insurance adjuster is totally different than the message I'll use to an attorney, which is totally different than the message I'll use to the immediate care center, which is it's very similar message that I'll use to the local GP. Those 2 messages will be very similar. And the x-ray person, it'll be similar with an accentuation on spinal biomechanics. So the core of it is always the science of the 3 phases of healing and the role chiropractic plays in it. That's always the core. And then you have to accentuate the pleasure and pain components relative to that target market. That's kind of what happens. So that's where you're at when you follow the flow chart. So the next thing they'll say is, well, they'll ask their family member or friend, where do I, do you know of a good chiropractor? Do you know of a good attorney? Do you know of a good doctor or whatever? Okay. So that's why you want to constantly be talking to your patient base, because remember, it's not just them. 2% of your community are in auto accidents every year. So that will include your patient base. So you can do the math. So 2% of your patient bases are in auto accidents every year. You should be regularly in touch with them, because remember, they're getting 5,000 messages a day. from everybody else, 5,000 to 7,000 messages a day. Go ahead and not talk to any of your patients. You will lose them in 6 months. They won't even be thinking about you. So you have to constantly be in front of them, reminding them you're there to help them. And I say it should be a minimum once a week, minimum. So you got your circle of influence. Well, that's kind of the first place they'll go, kind of from your circle of influence. So your patients and your past patients, 2% of those will be in an auto accident every year. You should be speaking to them. You should be communicating to them. And also they have a circle of influence of 7. 7, average person. So let's say, for an example, you're in a population, say a town of 30,000. Let's take 30,000, multiply 30,000 times 7.07, or let's say 30,000. Let's go, how many accidents? So 30,000 times 0.02, that's 6,000 auto injury cases a year. That's 500 a month, and that's only a population of 30,000. Now remember, this is not a volume game. I mean, you only need 5, 6, or 7 of those to increase your business $250,000, $500,000, and there's 500, and that's a population of only 30,000. Okay, and remember, 87% of all accidents have a soft tissue injury. Only 2/3 of them have a disc. So 2/3 of these cases are not going to medical. They may go, but there's nothing for them to do. You know, for the orthopedist, there's nothing for the orthopedist to do for those people. Neurosurgeon, there's nothing for them to do. Neurologist, there's nothing for them to do. See, it's all soft tissue. That's chiropractic. Okay, so you got, and then you have to look at your patient base. I mean, you may have 5,000 people in your patient base. 5,000 times 0.02, that's 100 divided by 12. That's 8.3. So in this particular scenario, you'd have 8 PI cases a month just from your existing patient base if you just regularly communicated with them and you said the right message. Of course, the message I'm talking about is an auto injury message. See, so how many of you are actually advertising and you never even say that you know anything about you treat auto injuries? There's a lot of doctors that never even say that. They just say, I'm a chiropractor, I treat back pain. No, you actually have to say, if you want to treat personal injury cases, you actually have to say it. You have to say it in your marketing. Okay, so that gives you an idea of what you're looking at. So that's where it starts. So one of the first things that you should always do is talk to your existing patient base. So what's the easiest way? Because remember, because 2% of them are in auto accidents, they have a circle of influence of 7. 2% of them are in auto accidents, so you have a direct connection to a decent number of auto injuries, but not if you're not communicating. So you go, okay, well, what's the best type of communication? Well, email, and now it's even text, but text happens even faster. Real short text messages. That's fast, quick, and to the point. Email's good. And then when you do an email or a text, the best message is a visual message. Remember, 55% of how he communicates visual. 36% is tone, 7% of the words. So if you see an email letter with text, well, there's a certain amount of communication there. Doesn't compare to a video though. There's a link to a video, the emotion is high. And if the doctor's in that video, and that's why I always say that the doctor always wants to be in that video when it's going to your brain. Why? For the emotional connection. Just from them seeing you, their confidence and trust will go up and defense and resistance will go down just because they see you and they know you. They won't do that with a text. That you won't have the same emotional reaction with a text. So that's why I say from all the communication styles, a recording from the video from the doctor is like the best type of messaging. And then the vehicle delivery is an email, or even it could be a lot of times what's happening, doctors, a lot of communications happening now with like a 1-2 punch. They're sending it email, and then they'll wait a few minutes, and then they'll send it in a text. So it's like a common 1-2 punch is kind of what's happening right now. And the text would be real small with a link in it where you could just press it, and there'd be a short message from the doctor. So that should be happening once a week. Once a week. So one of the best things you could do is create short videos and send them to your patient base once a week. Now, what's great about that is you want to syndicate it. What does that mean? It means this one video, we want to send it to all our social media sites and hopefully have people click on it. So you get like a spider web effect, not just one video to one person. So we not only send that video to them, but we take it, we run it through our whole social media accounts. Now, there's a couple ways of doing this, and I go into these individually. I'm not going to do it now, but I cover them separately in great detail. So you can either go and do it individually. So that's one way. Obviously, that takes more labor, more time. You can syndicate it. You can actually send it to a platform like Hootsuite, and it's connected to all your social media sites. So when you submit it to your platform, it goes out to all your social media sites automatically. That's a lot of good leverage of time and money. So syndicating content is real important, especially a blog, because remember, what's the single most important thing you can do to increase the strength of your website? It's a blog. Why? Because Google likes fresh, relevant content. Fresh, relevant content. That's what Google likes. Well, a regular stationary website doesn't do that, but the blog part of the website does. So when you are posting periodically and you're posting it correctly, in other words, it's done with SEO, search engine optimization. Well, every time you post, there's a little bell in your website that rings and says, Google, come index me. Google sends the spiders over, indexes everything. What's this about? What are the keywords? That's called SEO. And then it puts it in the file. So for whoever Googles those keywords, that's how it serves it up. Okay. And this is a very simplistic way of how it works. So when you cut these videos for your patients, you want them to go everywhere. You want them to go to a Hootsuite site that's, you're tied to 20, 30 other social media sites that it goes to. So it's like a spider web effect. And then you want to also put it in your blog post. Why? Because it'll significantly help your website strength. And then you connect a syndicator to your blog post. That's called OnlyWire. OnlyWire is connected to 20 different social media sites. So you may have this service over here. It could be Hootsuite. It could be, there's a lot of different what are called social media syndicators. In other words, you can just post to it once, and you had to go in there and connect all the website. In other words, you had to go in there, and then all the websites they had access to, you had to go in and fill out all the information, username, password, picture, and all that stuff. Okay. And then when you post it, boom, sends it to 10, 20, 30, 40 different sites. So that's tremendous. And that's highly recommended, by the way. So it's not just one-on-one. So if I were to cut a video for my patients and I'm marketing for personal injury, these are all the other things I'm going to do. It's not just going to be me making a video, sending it to my patients. That's not going to be the end of it. We're going to syndicate it. So one way is to hire a syndicator like Hootsuite. And then the other way is when you do that, put it into your blog post. And then there's a blog post syndicator that syndicates blogs. And it's the same thing. And what happens is like a spider web effect. And of course, everything is tied to your keywords. So whatever your keyword is, car injury doctor, location, whatever. So now your keyword is dominating the internet. See, that's how that works. Okay, so that's number one. So you would shoot a simple video, and I go over what you would say, how you shoot the video, the basics of it, the look of it, the feel of it, the lighting, the sound, really simple stuff. The only thing you don't want is you don't want it to look bad. That's all. You don't want it to look slick. You don't want it to look like it's an ABC production. It's not what you want. You just don't want it to look bad. And that's why we say we pay attention to positioning, we pay attention to lighting, we pay attention to sound, like what I'm doing here. We pay attention to the background. So I cover all the bullet points of how to have a mini studio. And you should, in your office, you should have an area that's set up. You can just leave it alone. And you can go in there and cut video. All you got to do is stand there, turn the lights on, put your lavalier on. And nowadays they got these Bluetooth lavaliers that gives you great sound quality. Put your lavalier on and you got great sound quality right into something as simple as, that's like the camera that's shooting this is a Logitech high definition webcam for $99. You can get this down at Best Buy. $99 Logitech webcam. Now that has a microphone in it, but you don't want to use that microphone because it's going to be too far away. That's why you want a lavalier tied, whether it's hardwired in or like this is just a Bluetooth. It's real easy to do that. But like me, like you're seeing me right now, I moved my microphone just out of the picture so you couldn't see it. That's my microphone right there. So I just moved it right there. So I still got good sound. It's catching good sound, but you don't see any of it. There's no distraction from my microphone there. So anyway, I cover how to shoot the basics of it so you have a clean looking video. And you should. I mean, now in today's day, you should have your own little studio set up, not just for doing stuff like this, but for doing testimonials. You've got to do testimonials. That's the number one marketing you have to do. It's the most effective marketing. Video testimonials are fantastic. They carry a tremendous amount of weight. So this is how easy it would be to shoot the picture. So I cover this separately, the lighting, the positioning, the sound, all that stuff. And then we cover the content. You go, well, what do you say? Well, it matters what you say. So I cover what are called the 14 emotional triggers. When we buy things, there's certain topics that we like to hear as a consumer. I like to hear how it's going to help me. Whatever it is I'm going to buy, how it's going to help solve that particular problem or get me what I want. That's saying. So there's a lot of, and that's what they're called. They're called 14 emotional triggers. So, and the more you can put into what you're doing, the better. The more the emotional triggers come in, the more you'll resonate with your target market. Now, I cover those separately also. I mean, those everything I'm talking about when I say I cover it, I say I cover them separately because you can't cover it in 5 minutes. Everything, when I say stuff like that, that's like a full webinar, like how to do a camera, positioning, lighting, background, this, audio, I mean, and then, editing, and then SEOing. That's a full webinar. Okay. All right. So we're talking about where to go first. So that's the very first thing from your office standpoint is you just want to create car injury videos with the right message. And they should go out at least once a week to all your patient base. And they should be uploaded to all your social media syndicators. So this video is like going to like 30, 40, 50 different sites. It's all over the place. Okay. So what's the second thing that patients will do is they will Google their insurance company. Now, they don't know it's not true with personal injury insurance, but they've been trained that if they they'll Google their insurance company and they'll look for a doctor that's in their backyard that's on that insurance company. They've already been trained that. Everybody knows that. So before they used to hand out books 20 years ago and they'd go through the book. Well, now they don't even hand out books. They just go online. So they'll Google Progressive Insurance from it. That's what they'll do. And what they're doing is they'll go there looking to see if there's a provider that's in their area, even though that's not true, because that's not the way it works with personal injury, but they don't know any better. They'll still do it. So what we do is we create what's called insurance videos. And they're videos like this, and we just cover all the topics that they want to know. There's about 5 questions they want to know when they Google you. It's like, do you accept this insurance, number one? What's the copay? What's the deductible? How much is the treatment cost? Who's going to do the billing? Those are the 5 big questions that they want to know when they Google. So we create videos. Now remember, we SEO the video also. So let's say that example was Progressive. So we would put in there Progressive car injury doctor, Progressive Insurance car injury doctor, like whatever your hometown is. So we're SEO it for your home. So we're SEO it for Progressive Insurance and the hometown, and then we'll add in car injury. So Progressive Insurance, car injury treatment, Hamilton, or whatever your city is. So that's SEOing it. So when people go Progressive Insurance, car accident, boom, your video pops up. That's what the goal is, to get your video to pop up. And then when they hit play, you're solving their 5 problems. You're solving their 5 problems, their 5 questions with an invitation, a stair-step offer invitation to take the next step in the call now. Okay, so those are called insurance videos. So the first place the patient will go is to their friends or family. Second place, they'll Google their insurance. What's the third place that the patient will typically go? They'll just go look for a chiropractor or a doctor. Now that's Google, that's called the Google Business Profile. So they'll just, now what they'll do, it's not personal injury related. They'll just put it, if they're looking for a chiropractor, they'll just put chiropractor Hamilton. Now you're into what's called the 3-pack on Google. And that's a whole different system. And by the way, I totally recommend having that done professionally. There's only a couple things that I recommend spending money on. There's only actually 2. That's one of them. You hire somebody who's professionally knows how to handle Google Local. And the other one is the keyword, the industry keyword for Google pay-per-click. Because you're guaranteed, that's a new patient. Somebody's putting in, I'm here in Fort Lauderdale. Somebody puts chiropractors in Fort Lauderdale. Guess what? They're not looking for a dog grooming place. That's a high probability patient. So essentially you're buying patients is what you're doing. So those are the only 2 sources of advertising that I definitely recommend that you spend money on. You'll get business. You will get new business from it. Okay, so what's the next place they'll go? They'll Google their condition, back pain treatment. Now there's a couple options with that. It could be back pain treatment, back pain chiropractor, back pain doctor with location. Okay, so whatever the gateways are, back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain. So you take all these common conditions and we create videos and we SEO them. So it might say back pain treatment, Hamilton, Ohio. Like let's say that's the city. Back pain treatment, Hamilton, Ohio. So that would have been the key word. That would have been the title of the video. That's how it would have been SEO'd. So when somebody types in chiropractor, Hamilton, or back treatment or neck treatment, Hamilton, Ohio, boom. Now you would do it with the gateways, and then you'd also do it with the car injury words. Car injury doc, it's always good with car injury treatment. So you got some variations on that third word. You can modify the first word. So it could be car injury, it could be car accident injury, it could be auto injury, it could be whiplash injury. So there's a few variations. And you never want to put all those variations in one video. Remember, anytime you add more than that keyword, it waters down and weakens it. That's why when you have different categories, like whiplash injury, that would be a separate video than car accident injury, than auto injury. All three of those would be separate videos, because if you did one video and you keyword it for all three of those, you'd weaken all three of them. In other words, you're confusing Google, going, well, which is this for whiplash? Is this for auto, or is this for car? See, that's what happens. That's why you can't do that. So in that case, you'd make 3 videos, not one, and you'd separate how the keywords. So, and then we already talked about the messaging, and then with the offer. So after we solve their 5 questions, then we entice them with an offer to pick up the phone and call. So that's condition video. So you want to do that. So the first words, and you want to do it for what are called the gateways. The gateways. What are the primary gateways in chiropractic? Back pain, neck pain, headaches. 84% of the population goes to a chiropractor for back pain, neck pain, headaches. 84%. 7% for extremities. So 91% of the reason people go to a chiropractor are for neuromusculoskeletal conditions, and only 8% are looking. So how smart would it be to try to market one of the visceral components that's only 9% of 8%? How small of a number is that? That's a ridiculously, pathetically low number. That's why you would never fool with that. So you take the gateways, there's what are called primary and secondary gateways. Some are more important than others. Well, those are the big ones: back pain, neck pain, headaches, joint pain, arthritis. Then throw in all the injury, car accident injury, auto accident injury, whiplash injury. Those are the main ones. And then you go down to the second ones like sciatica, disc bulge, carpal tunnel. There's about 10, say. If you throw in the auto injury words, you're probably at 12 or 15. Those are called the gateways. That's it. Well, you should do a video for each one of those. It should be on the internet. So anytime somebody types in your town, car injury treatment, your town, your video should pop up. Now there's 3 different ways of doing the video, of SEOing the video. One is for treatment. So it'd use the keyword car injury treatment location. So that's one. Another one is inserting chiropractor, car injury chiropractor location. And then another one is doctor, car injury doctor. And remember, you don't want to use all those keywords in one video because you weaken it. Okay. So you would want to do 3 separate videos. So if you were going to do car injury, I'd do 3 separate videos with car injury. One would be tagged for car injury treatment location. One would be car injury chiropractor. And one would be car injury doctor. That's what you should do. And that should happen for all your gateways. So when anybody Googles any of those combinations, guess what? You show up. Now it's even better than that when you take that material and then you syndicate it in your Hootsuite social media site that sends it out to 20, 30 other sites. And then you take it and you put it into a blog that's syndicated to another 20, 30 sites. Now you're everywhere. This is how you dominate your keywords. Okay. And then we cover what to say. I'm not going to cover that now, but we talked about the emotional triggers. And then you go to the next, what's the next category? Now, remember, as you go down to categories, you're decreasing the people that are looking for a product or service. So now we're down to the fifth category, which is your sign. By this time, it's a lot less people. You know, they've already picked because of a referral. They've Googled their insurance company. They've Googled chiropractors. So a lot of them have been taken up and gone places by now, by the time they get to the sign. So what we do with a sign is we try to create a proactive sign. I'll give you an example. It's like a very specific message. So it might say like car accident question mark, free massage, call X. Just something that simple. And signs can vary. I mean, it might just be a canvas sign that we roll out, you know, because there's all the laws with signs. You know, obviously the best sign is the signs that have the LED that you can send out messages when people come by. That's the best. But even if you didn't have that, you can still get very specific messaging. Even if you just bought separately a canvas, so it didn't go on your original sign. But even if you just made the sign out of canvas and you just stuck it in the yard, even if you could just keep it there temporarily, depending on what your rules and regulations are. And you know, how many people are driving up and down that road every day? Sometimes it's 20, 30, 40,000 people passing your sign. So that's where people go. So when the 8% are in an auto accident, that's where they go. That's the flow chart. So that's what we start with. We fill one of them at a time. And here's the deal. If you're not in one of those categories, well, you're guaranteed not to get any patients from that category. You just lost a certain amount of patients there. And it's worse than that, because you not only lost those patients, you lost all their referrals. So now go into two of those categories, and you're not doing either one of them. You're not doing the videos, condition videos. You're not doing the insurance videos. So now you're not going to get anybody from there, and you're not going to get any of their referrals. See, it's a magnifier effect. Either it magnifies how you lose, or it magnifies how you win. So we always get 1.5 new patients for every new patient. We're not just going to get the new patient and then that's it, go pay for another one. No, we expect to get another patient from this patient within 30 days. Their son, mother, father, brother, sister, because we know how to do that. We know what to say. So those are the 5 categories. So in summary, these are the marketing systems. You go, okay, well, where do the people go? Well, first they call their insurance adjuster. So you can market to the insurance adjuster and give him a good package to make it really worthwhile to refer to you, because you're not going to have these outrageous bills. See, in other words, you're going to hold down the savings for that insurance adjuster. That's the message for the insurance adjuster. The next one is the emergency room. That's biomechanics of the spine. The next one is the immediate care centers. That's the science of the 3 phases of healing with the GP. And then you go, okay, what next? Well, now it's family members. Now it's trusted source. So now that's you creating the information and sending it out. Well, what content do you send out? Well, that's called the emotional triggers. Those are the 14 emotional triggers I talked about that we're going to cover. That's the message you send out. It has this in it. It has this in it. It has your name. It has your story. You know, it's got a pleasure. It's got a pain. It's got a logic. It's got a guarantee. It's got an offer. There's just, you know, certain things that you want to be in there that we buy as consumers, consciously and subconsciously. So that's the content. And then how we would send it out, vehicle of distribution. We would want it syndicated. So that's circle of influence. Then you go to your insurance videos, and those would be syndicated also. From there, it's Google for Business, Google Business Profile. And there's ways of doing that. About, you know, most people think that's all about getting reviews. 16% is only about the reviews. There's several other things you need to do to actually be number one in Google reviews. It's not just about reviews. And there's so much to it that I actually suggest hiring somebody that knows what they're doing, because there's a lot to that. The next one is condition videos. Again, you need the emotional triggers, and then you take them and you syndicate them. You syndicate them with something like Hootsuite and your blog. And now they're everywhere. So anytime anybody Googles any of those combinations of words, you're the one they see. You're the one that's getting the call. And by the way, and then the last one was the sign. We talked about how easy it is to do the sign. So by the way, how expensive is all this stuff? Well, a webcam's $99. These I think were $30. Lavalier microphone. You can buy a ring lamp for $12. Put a ring lamp in front of you for light for $12. Maybe a tripod stand to put your camera on in your office. So it might be $10 there. That's it. So what does it cost to communicate with your patients? Not outside of those costs, nothing. It's all free. And it stays out there forever. As soon as you put it on the internet, it stays out there forever. Your insurance videos, it takes time to do them. What does it cost? Nothing. But it stays out there forever. Google for Business, that does take some labor. That takes a little labor or cost to get that right. Then you go down to condition videos. There's no cost for that. It's free. And they're out there forever. And then you go to the sign. Well, that's a small cost. You get a canvas sign with the message. Might be $150, something like that. So the whole, out of all of these areas, how much did all of it cost? About $300 for the camera, the light, the microphone, the lavalier. You pay $10 for the syndicator, the blog syndicator. You might pay $100, $80 a month for the social media syndicator. There's all your expenses. That covers all the places where the patients go. Now, what's going to be the most effective marketing? It's not going to be your publicity. It's not going to be your advertising. It's going to be you knowing what to say. In other words, do you know what to say when you go to the immediate care center? Do you know what to say to the emergency room doctors? Do you know what to say to your local general practitioner? Do you know what to say to your local neurologist, neurosurgeon, or orthopedic surgeon? That's called educational sales. That takes knowledge and skill. Doesn't cost anything. It just takes knowledge and skill. You actually have to know what you're doing, and you can't be afraid to go do it. You can't be afraid to go introduce yourself to another professional. So those are the costs involved. That I just explained where all the patients go. All the personal injury patients go. That's the flow chart of where they go. And you want to be in every one of those positions. Every one of them you want to be in. You should have a checklist. Everything I just said, you should have a checklist. And every one of them you do. Why? Because it costs little to nothing. And you're gonna have good return on investment. And all of these things you're not doing, you're not getting any of their business right now, and you're not getting any of their referrals. And these are people that are looking for a chiropractor. They're already looking for you. So those are the systems.